Okay, let's see if we can get the technology going here. And there we go. Okay. At about 10 till, somebody over here do this or something, or else we'll be here until about 3. I'm going to try to bring you the 30,000-foot perspective. It's what we at regional accrediting agencies do well. It's not just because we spend all of our time in an airplane, although in my case, that's pretty much what I do. I'm also not going to try to bring you just the SACS perspective. I'm going to try to think in terms of regional accreditation across all of the regions. I may get it wrong, but if I do, you know who to talk to at your own accrediting agency. I'm the first one with a PowerPoint. That's because I need to remember where I'm going. So whether you pay any attention to it or not, that will keep me on task. It seems to me as I started this conversation, or as I started thinking about this presentation, one of the things you all are dealing with is unfunded or underfunded. There's a little bit of deconstruction in there for those of you who are literary critics, just enjoy it. Underfunded mandates. That is the states and the federal government telling you that it's taking too long for your students to get from start to finish in a degree. Are you here from Texas? The home of the $10,000 baccalaureate. There's no way they're going to do a baccalaureate and $10,000 without concurrent enrollment. That's just the reality. The fact that Florida doesn't have a $10,000 baccalaureate is because the governors haven't talked yet, right? Okay. So the perceived shift from dual credit as an opportunity to dual credit as a requirement. The fewer and fewer courses necessary to get from start to finish, and then you going from just offering a few courses in terms of concurrent enrollment to being asked or being asked, cordially required, to offer the entire associate's degree in concurrent enrollment. Anybody here from Virginia? Okay, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Virginia's governor went to a high school graduation. Somebody at that high school graduation graduated with an associate's degree at the same time as he or she graduated with a high school degree. The governor thought that was such a wonderful thing that all of the community colleges in the state are now required to have their gen ed, their associate's degree at every high school in their region. By when, Janine? Next year? Now, basically? Now. It's been a 2-year process-ish, okay? Put yourself in the position of those folks that are in Western Virginia, where the campus is here and the high school is across 3 mountains, okay? The one I think we can all get behind, increased access to underserved populations. If you've looked at the study that the Higher Learning Commission just did, though, you will find that one of the things they've realized is, in talking with everybody, that even though that's what we're about, is trying to get college experience to underserved populations, it really is, that's the big piece that's not quite working yet. We're still trying to figure out how to get those students who wouldn't normally go to college in the pipeline. You're being asked to partner with high schools or forced to partner with high schools, basically to compete with AP and IB, and to do so cheaper. And for those of you who are, particularly the community colleges, are being asked to bring their gen ed or the equivalent of the AP class, the IB class in, so that the parent doesn't have to pay for the student to take the test that might not transfer. Not that I'm cynical or anything. And I've got the thin ice I realize that's a little bit negative there, but you know, these are the things that it strikes me from an accreditation standpoint that can get you in trouble with your concurrent enrollment courses. And I don't know, actually number 3 is probably the most important one. If you don't consider the students and the courses at the high school to be your students and your courses, and if you don't treat them appropriately as if they were your students and your courses, you're already in trouble. Because we accreditors don't accredit the high school. Somebody does. If you want his phone number, I can get you his phone number. His name is Mark Elgard, and he works for Advanced Ed in almost every region in the United States. But we don't do K-12. That's not our purview. Our purview is your courses. So these are your courses, they're your faculty, they're your students, they're your library, they're your academic and student support. See where I'm going here? Institutional control and your ability to demonstrate to a committee of peer reviewers that you control what's going on everywhere you offer a class or a credential. So, course design and rigor. These are going to sound like the NACEP standards, actually, which I just felt like I needed to say. For some reason. Faculty qualifications. Those go differently from region to region. Those of you who are in the southern region know that deservedly, for better or for worse, we have a reputation of being the hardest on faculty qualifications. Just remember, that's not staff, that's you. Our peer review teams are you. So, you know, don't blame me for that one. Are you controlling admissions? I'll tell you, the angriest I've seen a peer review team visiting dual credit sites was when the peer review team realized that the high school was determining who got to take dual credit classes and the college had no say in admissions requirements or readiness or anything. The high school was essentially using dual credit to substitute having to pay for AP. And the college was paying the professor. Are the students prepared? And I'm going to take since I have the microphone at this point, I'm just a little bit worried, and I'm not so much worried about the 16-year-old and 17-year-old and 18-year-old girls, but I am worried about 18-year-old boys and younger, and whether their brains have snapped in yet, whether they're developmentally, whether they're intellectually, are they capable, and you know, I'm not sure they're any more capable at 18 than they are at 14. I'm pretty sure I wasn't capable when I was that age, and I wasn't thinking about school. School was a place to think about everything else. So, boy, I didn't mean to go to sustainability quite that fast. Quickly, academic and student support. Back to what I said at the beginning. They're your students. If they fail because they don't have academic and student support, you need to treat them the same way you would treat them if they were a matriculated freshman or sophomore on your campus. And you need to set up the ability for things like tutoring, things like ADA accommodation, all of those things that go along. These are your students. You cannot slap that off on the high school. And the same thing with library and learning resources. Now, all of the accreditors have a well-deserved reputation for being sticklers about library and learning resources. And the more online classes we have, the more those sticklers are going to be. Because when you're projecting yourself out there, you can't ask that student to come to your campus to go to the library. You've got to have appropriate services that go with the course, that meet the student where she is. This is a question I have as I watch and listen to you all talk. What's a sustainable model? I'll go back to Virginia and you all can, do blah, 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 blah if you want to while I do this. But it seems to me as I've talked to presidents of community colleges in Virginia, they're being asked to push almost their entire gen ed curriculum out to the high school at a significantly reduced tuition rate, which does a couple of things. First of all, it cuts their tuition, and it dries up their future student body. So I've talked to more than one president who's a little bit worried that this model of dual credit is going to damage the college in the long run and its ability to perform, to provide career and technical education, workforce development, as well as transfer. Couple that with, in these same institutions, these same communities, the larger, I've heard more this year than any other year, community colleges talking about 18-year-old traditional aged college students coming to them as opposed to going someplace else to start their college career. So they've got this influx, 15, 20% larger group of traditional aged college students looking for a bachelor's degree and starting it at the community college. So who pays? Who benefits? And how do you do all this in what they call, especially in Florida, the new normal? That is, you have more students. Do you have more money? Oh, come on. Do you have more money? Do you have less money? How much less? 20%? 30%? In some states in the South, it's 40% less operating from the state. There are some institutions, I can name you 2 or 3, large public research institutions where the state contribution is less than 5% of the annual budget. Research 1 institutions. I won't tell you which state. Okay, that's Adam Sandler, that's the water boy. What does that have to do with anything? It's a great scene. See, I told you I was going to tighten this up. It's the scene in which Adam Sandler gets knocked out, and his girlfriend runs out with the little bottle in the blue bag that he's been keeping, that she has, and she pours it into his mouth, and he springs up, and he says, "Now that's high quality H2O." It's a lot funnier when Adam Sandler does it. But my point there is, we don't need to talk about anything if we're not talking about high quality, highest quality. And that's not just concurrent enrollment, that's up and down the line. It won't do us any good. I'm going to start preaching here. Okay. If you have a credential, right now the statistics say if you have a bachelor's degree, you're going to earn this much more than somebody without a bachelor's degree. But if we get a bunch of people with bachelor's degrees that don't know anything, I suspect we're going to skew that in the future. Right? So it's our job to make sure that when they get the credential, they can actually do what it is we say they ought to be able to do. And they can learn how to do something else, because chances are, how many of you in this room are doing what you went to college to do? Good for you, not me. As you can tell from my bio, I'm not even doing what I went to graduate school to do. State and accreditation standards, portability, that's something we need to start talking about. We need to start talking clearly about it. Portability, will this stuff help the student? There's a major barrier that I'm glad the policy folks have at least begun to recognize. And then it's learning not just credits, and here's my last story, and it's one of my favorite chapters. It's the chapter nobody ever talks about in Tom Sawyer. It's the chapter right after the whitewashing of the fence. Tom Sawyer goes to church the next day and shows up with enough tickets, each one of which represents a memorized Bible verse. Tom Sawyer shows up with enough tickets because he's traded them, he's cajoled them, he's conned people out of them to get a Bible. And the very last thing is, can you give me at least one scripture verse? And he can't even quote one verse. So cobbling together credits doesn't equal learning. And I think the conversation that you all are having about pathways and about helping the students where they start to understand what it takes to go from here to here to here to get to what I want to do when I grow up. That conversation about career and technical education as concurrent enrollment, as transferable, and will it transfer into your Associate of Applied Science? Well, it should. What's different in cosmetology when you're a sophomore in high school than when you're a sophomore in college? Not much. So that concept of helping students understand what it means to be an educated person, what it means to be a college graduate from the very beginning. Now, that's probably what you feel like when I show up. I could do rock on a hard place. This one seemed a little bit more threatening. Okay? What I'd like for you to feel like is that. And let me give you some examples. Look at your regional accreditation agency standards up front. Don't wait until the very end to say, oh my gosh, we didn't hit this check mark. Don't be surprised if your regional accreditor says, by the way, we're showing up to visit all 15 of the dual credit sites that you just started last year. Why? Because the feds want to know. They want to know every place you are. And I think the NSA is not actually talking to the DOE because the DOE wants to know a street address. And if the NSA was talking to them, they'd already know the street address. Use our expertise. You are my job. Actually, there are a couple of you in the room that really are my job, my institutions. I have about 86 institutions that I serve that I'd like to consider clients rather than anything else. I want the phone call early. We're thinking about this. What would you suggest? Where are the pitfalls? One thing here, and I wish there were a way around it, all of the regional accrediting agencies are voluntary. Yeah, we'll let that one sink in. Your membership is voluntary. What that means is, and we all have multiple states except for WASC. No, even WASC has multiple states. What that means is there may be rules and legislation in your state that puts you out of compliance with one of our standards because our standards are large enough to go with multiple states. Well, most of you will go back to the sword of Damocles. You'll be stuck. Let me tell you that there are resources in our office, in all of the offices, that are more than happy to pick up the phone and call the state, call the governor. I suspect in the 11 southern states, every governor's chief of staff has Belle Whelan on speed dial. I know for a fact that she's gone to a couple of states and met with the boards of regents and said, they may be in compliance with the state law, but would you like for them to be accredited? So, there are some times when it takes a big foot. We'll do that. There are some times when it takes cajoling. Your state auditor doesn't want to audit your financial aid. Well, give us a call. We'll have a conversation with the state auditor's office, which we can do and you might not be able to. Don't rush through the quality elements. I know I skipped substantive change. It's the big elephant in the room, and if I start talking about that, we'll never finish. But make sure you know your agency's substantive change policy and at what point you get to where you have to declare this as an off-campus instructional site. For the feds, it's 50% or more. Some of them push it a little higher. Don't rush through the quality elements. Do your planning first. Don't get so pushed that you start this without thinking about what it's going to be like and about what it's going to take to get your program out to a different place. And what I started with, they're your faculty, they're your courses, they're your students. The experience doesn't have to be equal, but it does have to be comparable, and it does have to be appropriate. And we'll give you some leeway on comparability. And as the last thing there, if you're assessing student learning outcomes either on the course level or the program level, and all of you need to be assessing it on the program level because every regional accreditor asks you for program level student learning outcomes assessment, and about half of them ask you to demonstrate course level student learning outcomes assessment that results in improvement. Don't ignore your students that are someplace else. Because if I look at my crystal ball and look out there, the next thing I'm seeing is the Department of Education asking you to demonstrate how your dual credit classes are comparable in quality to your face-to-face classes on your campus. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to be able to disaggregate the student learning outcomes data. So you might as well do it now, like the Fram oil filter guy. And we really are here to help. I know it sounds like it's a funny cliche, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We really are here to help. And yet, I don't want to be intrusive. I'm not going to pick up the phone and call you. I make people nervous when I pick up the phone and call them. But if you call me or email me, chances are I can help. And I can help break down some of those barriers and be a real partner for you. Okay. 3 minutes, wow. Yeah, whatever you want to do. Thank you.